All right, the New York Times tamping down expectations for conservatives of what is to come in the DOJ Inspector General Michael Horowitz's report. Is it game over for President Trump's supporters who have been claiming the report into alleged FBI abuses will be damning? Joining me now, member of the House Judiciary Committee, Republican Congressman Andy Biggs. Good to have you tonight, sir.
Good to be with you, Shannon.
All right, let me read a little bit of what the New York Times, and somebody clearly is leaking, having seen a draft of this, and we don't know how much or if it's a full draft, saying the Justice Department's Inspector General found no evidence that the FBI attempted to place undercover agents or informants inside Donald J. Trump's campaign. The finding is one of several by Mr. Horowitz that undercuts conservatives' claims that the FBI acted improperly in investigating several Trump associates starting in 2016. Your response tonight?
Well, it's coming from the New York Times, and so the New York Times has been so reliable that how could we disagree with that? No, of course, the New York Times is going to spin this any way it can to try to undercut what happened there, which was that the FBI was actually spying on members of the Trump campaign. That's why you got FISA warrants. That's why you have Carter Page being looked at. That's why you have George Papadopoulos being looked at. So I find it intriguing that they're out there spinning it. And then, Shannon, it always gets back to who's leaking this stuff. I always find that interesting as well.
Yeah, because our understanding is, as with any report like this, people are called in if they've been witnesses or part of this. Their attorneys are called in. They're allowed to give reactions to the report. We've been hearing about that process. But we're also told that they were supposed to sign non-disclosure agreements. So we don't know if it's one of those folks, if there's a violation. We just don't know. But it's coming December 9th. Then we'll know for sure what is true and what's not. In the meantime, we just reported a short time ago that there has been a breaking development in the House Democrats' efforts to force Don McGahn, former White House counsel, to come to the Hill and testify. Now, he hasn't been the White House counsel since the Ukraine call has gone on, which is what we're told that the impeachment situation is about. But now it appears that Democrats may be reaching back to some of the Mueller report. A couple of headlines from the Washington Post says Democrats are debating whether articles of impeachment should include obstruction of justice allegations detailed in Mueller's report. And again, from the New York Times, House Democrats are still considering an article of impeachment that would accuse Mr. Trump of obstruction of justice. So what we're hearing is that their interest in having McGahn testify is so that they can not only include the Ukraine call, but some of what was in the Mueller report in the impeachment potential articles. I mean, you're a member of the Judiciary Committee. You'll have a hand in what happens. What do you expect?
Well, they are trying to include abuse of power and obstruction of justice, which is why they wanted to get Don McGahn in there in the first place. You're exactly right on that. I would be surprised if he ever comes in and testifies. And quite frankly, the direction, when you ask what's going to happen next, we're going into a hearing next week in the Judiciary Committee where you're just going to get a bunch of law professors coming in to basically lecture us on what we have heard and why that constitutes impeachable offenses. That's not really important because we're really the ones who are trying the case or looking at the case. We're the ones who determine whether there's impeachable offenses, and we're also the ones that determine how you apply the law to it, not these law professors. And so I guess the question ultimately will be how much rope does Nancy Pelosi give Jerry Nadler?
Well, folks are home, as you are, for the Thanksgiving holiday, and we understand many of them are hearing from their constituents. Do you think that's going to move the needle at all? Because most of the polls that we've been tracking seem to indicate that, as the hearings have played out, the numbers for impeachment have actually gone down.
Right. And I actually was at an event last night, and I will tell you, the passion against impeachment is really high, but I have that kind of district where that's going to be the case. Where you're going to see this really develop, Shannon, is in those 31 swing districts where President Trump won. That's where these people are getting an earful, and that's where the support for impeachment is cratering. And so those people are the ones that are going to decide whether this thing really becomes an impeachment or something else, or they put it up on the floor and it doesn't get enough votes. We'll see how that plays out, but that's where the real rubber meets the road in those districts right now.
Where we will all be watching the Judiciary Committee hearings. You a part of that next week. Enjoy your Thanksgiving. In the meantime, great to have you.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving, Shannon.
You too.